We've made it, Pete. It's official. We've made it to the holidays. So everyone, all you Michaels fans out there, all you Lego fans. So I am Chris. I'm a Lego Master Model Builder. I'm here at my home actually right now, and I have my two sidekicks with me. My kids, Chase over here is going to be helping me build, and my daughter Ella, who's already building on the ground. And I am one of 7 Lego Master Model Builders in the world, and we're the ones that create the large-scale sculptures like you see all over the world at Legoland parks, at Lego events, and we really get to have fun building and creating large-scale sculptures out of Lego. We're not really the ones that make the actual sets. Maybe Pete and I will talk about that throughout the actual session here, but we are the ones that create the large-scale sculptures. So I've been at Lego now for 13 years this year. So it's I have quite a bit of experience building with Lego, as well as Pete does. So I'm actually going to throw it over to Pete and let him introduce himself.
Hey, everybody. So as Chris said, my name's Pete, and I'm one of 7 master model builders like Chris, or Lego master model builders more specifically. And again, we are the team that gets to have the luxury and pleasure of creating all of the large scale models that you'll see in retail or at theme parks all over the world. We also get to kind of work with kids like yourselves on events, which Chris will go deeper into later on. And most importantly, today, we're super excited to be here to do a really awesome, appropriately timed themed holiday build with you guys today, guys and gals. And then maybe take some suggestions and try to do some free builds based on what you guys would like to see Chris and I make, in addition to answer any questions you may have, which brings up a good point. If you have questions, put them into the chat and we'll get to those in a little while. But before we do that, I'd like to share a build that I worked up that I think is appropriately in theme to the time of year we find ourselves in, and take you through and do a live build where Chris and I will maybe explain some of the reasons why we did the design the way we did, and maybe offer some options. Because one thing I really want to illustrate and emphasize right now is what I'm building, you can make a version of at home. And to do that doesn't require that you have all the same parts in the same color, shape, size, any of that. What I'm offering is inspiration. So feel free to follow along, and also ad lib, which means change it to fit the parts you have or the desired look you're going for. So without further ado, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to change my camera over to a different view. And these are the parts that we're going to build. Anyone out there who thinks they might know what we're making, feel free to guess and throw it in the chat, and we'll let you know as we're going. So I'm going to start off, and when we build a model out of Lego, we like to have a solid base, and this one is a little bit tricky because of its size. So I'm going to start with this right here. This is just a standard 1x1 brown plate. It's called a 1x1 brown plate because, well, it's one stud and there's one direction and one stud in the other. So I'm going to move these out of the way so it's not confusing for you guys. So you guys can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to use, this is one of my favorite bricks. We get this question all the time. What is your favorite brick to use? And this is called a 1x1 brick with studs on all sides. I got to get used to where this camera is. I apologize. And this is going to allow us to do some really cool stuff. But before I do that, I forgot I got to put a second 1x1 plate. And this is a really good tip. If you put 1x1s on top of each other, if you put them on a flat surface and push on one edge, that'll square it all up so it's nice and straight. I'm going to follow up with the brick I just described, 1x1 with studs on all sides. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to sandwich another 1x1 with studs on all sides. And this right here is a very specific arrangement, meaning I put these bricks in a certain order. And the reason I did that is I want to make it strong, because we'll talk about interlocking later now, but it's very easy for me to break that. But if I stud across the studs that are on the side, which you can see here, now it's nice and strong in this direction, and it's going to allow me to add a lot of detail. So this plate that I just added, that's called it's actually a tile, not a plate. That's a 1x3 tile, and it's called a tile because there's no studs and it's flat. I'm going to flip this model over, and on the other side, completely opposite to that one, I'm going to put a tan one. And I don't really want to tell you what this is yet, because I asked, if you see what you think I'm making, feel free to throw it into the chat. Now that I have these guys all sandwiched together, I'm going to put this one on the end, which is a little bit of a little hint to what I'm making. And now,
what's that piece? Is it looks kind of like I don't know. What is that? I don't know yet. I'm not gonna spill the beans on it, Pete.
All
Hey,
right.
can I actually say something real quick, Pete?
Yeah, go for it.
For everyone who is not being able to really build along with Pete here, we want to make sure that you know that at the end, the directions will be posted so that you'll have the actual directions to build this. So don't feel like you have to be digging and finding the exact pieces Pete is using. We understand that it's a difficult thing to do to find the right elements. But you also have to know too, it doesn't really matter if you don't have the right color. It'll work no matter what. You'll still get the basic image as to what Pete is building. But yeah, make sure you throw those guesses in there. And Pete, back to you.
All right, so I'm going to start. So if this was a typical set that you would build that you maybe purchased at the store or were given as a gift, this would be a pause moment where we're going to do a sub build. So I'm going to jump to the next part, and I'm going to start with this, which I have already discussed with everybody, that a 1x1 would just be one stud. This is a 1x2 because it's got two studs in one direction and one in another. And this is going to give us our firm base. So I'm going to add to that a 1x2 with bow, which is like a slope brick, except it's got an arc as opposed to a direct angle. So I'm going to put that on there. Then I'm going to take this one right here, which this is a really cool special element. It's an older one. It's a 1x1. I don't actually know, but I believe it's called 1x1 with knobs on side, which is a little bit misleading because these are knobs on side as well. But this is going to allow us to add a really nice, and in my opinion, really necessary feature. And then we're going to go back to the old standard, a 1x1 plate. That guy goes right there. I'm going to stack another one. And then I'm going to put this on there. This is a cheese wedge. And we call it that because it looks like a wedge of cheese. Although
We're always hungry, let's be honest.
If you find a block of black wedge cheese, you might want to reconsider and make sure the wax has been removed. But if it's cheese that's turned that black color, I would probably avoid eating it.
It's a little moldy.
So now I'm going to go back to the model section that I paused, and I'm going to add this piece to this piece by plugging this stud right here into this, or this hole rather, in this stud into that hole. And now you can probably start to guess where we're going with this. So if any of you out there have a guess, throw it into the chat and Sam will share if anyone is on point. But I'm going to...
Is that a German Shepherd? I knew it. That's what it is.
It could be. So now I'm going to show everybody. I've intentionally brought parts that are a little bit different than the building instructions to show how you can take the model and change it to what you have to build with. So in the building instructions, I use this element, which is a 1x1 round with hole, which is a newer piece, and it allows for something really awesome. So if you look at this, which this is a tooth plate, a 1x2 tooth plate. If I flip this over, we have what's called a tube on the bottom. And if you have a 1x1 with a hole in it, you can plug that hole into the tube and you can center this piece, which would allow me to do something like this and put it onto the head. And then I could have that centered. Or if you don't have this piece, because like I said, it's newer and you might not have it, it's a little bit more rare than the standard old 1x1 round plate, we can get around that by using what's called in the fan community a jumper plate. We call it a half stud because it actually will divide. If you look at this next to this, it's in the center of those two studs, which means it's offset over the distance of half of one stud, which I know it's a lot of words and maybe some confusion. But the reason I'm using this plate, if you look at the bottom, it doesn't have a tube, where this one does. So because there's no hole in this round, if I tried to center it, I can't. So it would be in it wouldn't be the offset that I want. So to get around that, we're going to take this stud, which is a hollow stud, and we're going to put it onto that tube. And now you have the same ability to put it on the center, and you can offset it. And I want to show that I think it's okay, even though this one is a little bit thicker than that one, I think it's okay. So I'm actually going to put that on both sides because I like the look of that. I actually like the thickness that we get by doing it this way. So again, I'm just going to take the 1x1 round. I'm going to put it on that. I'm going to take my half stud or jumper plate, and I'm going to put it so that it lines up by putting the hollow stud onto the tube. And now we have those plugged in and on there. And then the last step, actually, before I go to the last step, So we have this section here, which is kind of a cool, fun nose. It's a cheese wedge. And I was doing some experimenting. And again, I'm going to change from my building instructions. And I'm going to put this, we call this the pie slice. So I don't know if anyone who's tuned in now was tuned into the dot session that Lego held with Michaels earlier in the year. They use these a lot in Lego dots, but it's also a really fun way to add cool, interesting shapes that are a little bit less square or angular. So I'm going to put these last 4 1x3 tiles on using all the studs all the way around. And then you end up with a final build. And I'm going to switch cameras so I can hold it up and everybody can see it. So here it is when it's all said and done. I think it's pretty cute.
Yeah.
Sam, I don't know if anybody was able to guess it. Maybe, maybe not, but that's a
We have
fun
fun.
little build. As Chris said, there's going to be building instructions shared out after the session is over. I hope that everybody that wants to gets the instructions and builds a version of it. And if you do, we would love to see it. So if you could take photos of it and have parents help you post that to social media at either #Lego or #MakeItWithMichaels. Chris and I and all the master builders and the builders in our shop who are on their journey to becoming master builders would all love to see it. But I think, you know, that probably concludes the lead build section of this, unless anyone has questions specifically to that. Now we have questions for you guys. We'd love to have you offer us suggestions of things you'd like to see built, preferably in a holiday theme. And once those start to come in, Sam will share those with us and we'll start to tackle those builds. Give us a few options. Maybe Chris and I can do different model builds.
Try something, right?
Yeah, we'll try to do something. And
Hey.
in addition, yeah, what's up, Chris?
Well, how about this, Pete? While we wait for the actual suggestions come in, maybe what we can do is we can talk about something that you know, we talk about every time we do one of these Michael's classes, and it's largely about what makes successful building, right? So when we build as master builders, there's tips, there's tricks, there's ways that we build that make our models a successful build in the end. And we talk about every single time when we do these classes, and I think it's one of the critical key things to building, and it's called interlocking. Now, it's a style of building that adds strength to your model. So, Ella, can you show all the other kids and families out there this model right here? Can you show this one off to them? Go ahead, show it right over here. So Ella is showing you a model that is actually not interlocked very well. You can see how the purple is stacked straight up, the dark red is stacked straight up, and so on. Ella, can you just go ahead and break that in half? See how hard it is to break in half. Go ahead. Show them and put it right up there in the camera, right up there. It's in pieces already. So Ella is very easily able to break this model. Now, here's another example right here. Now, this is actually called Chase. My son over here is going to show you. This one right here is a perfect example of what we would call interlocking. So go ahead, show that more. No, it's not like that. It's like this. Go ahead. Go put both hands right here and try to break it. Oh, that took a lot of force. That took a lot of force. He's saying it didn't. It definitely did. So interlocking is a process of overlapping seams. So you can see the dark red overlaps the purple all the way down. When we build our large scale sculptures, that's exactly how we build them, with overlapping seams. Just like a mason would build a wall on a skyscraper, we build our Lego models in that way. And that's largely to make our models nice and strong and stable and secure. Now, another question that Pete and I often get asked is, how do we sort our bricks? How do we store our bricks? And it's actually, it's a little bit easier for us in many cases, because when we get our bricks into the model shop where we all work in Enfield, Connecticut, they all come pre-sorted. So we don't have to take and sort out all our bricks. They'll all come, and one box has all the 2x4 oranges in it, and another box, all the 1x2 greens are in it. So we're able to go into those bins and put them into our actual brick storage bins, which we have at our desk here. So this is an example of it here. I don't know if you can all see it very well here, but in each one of these compartments is an actual brick sorted out, so we don't have to sort our bricks as we build. So we start off in the corners with 1x1 bricks, and then 1x2s, 1x3, 1x4, all the way up to 2x10s as well. So it's all sorted out, and this is how we would do it in the shop. Now, at home, there's some other options that you might be able to get. I'm not sure if Michael's has them, but they might have something like this, which would be a kind of like a tackle box, maybe a parts bin that already has these little dividers in there so that you can go ahead and take and sort your bricks into them at home. And it makes it easier and quicker to build, especially if you're building something like maybe even a Lego set. It allows you to keep all your small pieces in one area and maybe your bigger pieces in another. And it's just a little bit easier to actually organize your bricks and build your models. And if you're really into it, you can go ahead and sort them out just like we have them here by color and shape. But that takes a lot longer to do, obviously. Oh, we're moving the camera here. There we go. So
thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
Sorry. Hi, everyone. My name's Sam, and I work with Chris and Pete. So I'm answering your questions in the Q&A section. So if anyone has any questions about what's happening, or if you have some questions you want Chris and Pete to answer in today's session about their jobs or their favorite things about building with Lego bricks or tips and tricks, just ask your questions in the Q&A and I'll share them with Chris and Pete. And absolutely, as Pete and Chris have mentioned, we also want to do some live building for you today. So we're going to share the instructions for that reindeer Pete made after the session. But what do you want them to build right now? I already have lots of suggestions in the Q&A, so I'm going to get Chris and Pete working on their first challenge. But if you have any holiday suggestions that you'd like them to build, go ahead and put that in the Q&A. So Chris and Pete, we have a lot of great suggestions already. So I think we're going to start out with a different challenge for both of you. So Chris, I'd like you and Ella and Chase to work on building a Christmas tree. And Pete, can you start working on a snowman?
Snowman. Oh, what? Come on, he's already done it. That doesn't count.
A new snowman. Pete, you have to make a new snowman.
I just made that while Chris was gabbing. Okay, I'll make a new one.
All right. A brand new one. And then we'll take some more suggestions. But while they're building that, we're going to start with answering some of your questions too. So guys, one of the questions that we've already gotten, I know you've had it lots before, is what's your favorite thing that you've ever built as a Lego Master Model Builder?
You want to go first?
That's a tough one because it really is like, and you can't do this because they're right here, but it's like picking your favorite child, right? You can't do that. But we do work on models all over the world, all over, massive ones right down to really small scale ones. But most recently, I think one of my most favorite projects I was able to work on was, and I'm actually going to give a different one that I've done in the past because I just remembered it and I remember how much I enjoyed working on it. And it was actually a lowrider that we did. Chase knows it. He's seen it. It was, we built it on the chassis of a golf cart, actually. We ripped all the golf cart stuff off it and we built a whole lowrider with hydraulics in the front, so the front of the car lifted up and then the back lifted up and it was all like bouncing around and stuff, and it just looked like a classic LA lowrider, and it was a lot of fun to build. And I enjoyed it because it was more than just building with Lego. It was you're having to work with different types of steel and then different electronics and stuff to make the whole thing work. So it was just a really cool and engaging project for me.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was a really good one. I tend to prefer to work on character stuff. So I like to make people as opposed to places or things. And probably my favorite, which anyone who's tuned in and seen Chris and I on these in the past know that this kind of changes as he, comically referenced. It really is almost like choosing a child because you put so much energy and effort. Just to maybe answer preemptively another question, these models can take hundreds of hours to design. And usually it's a factor of 3, which is an adult way of saying if it takes 100 hours to design, it's usually about 300 hours to build. So there's a lot of time and love that goes into these. But to answer the question on the table, I would say my favorite that I probably have worked on in the recent years would be Thanos from Infinity War, which You can find information for that on the internet. That was really fun. He's an iconic character. He's somebody that I grew up with as a kid in comic books. So to be able to realize him at a life-size scale, which means as big as he would be if he was standing in front of you, which is 8.5 feet tall, was a really fun challenge that I would love to undertake with many other characters. So I think that's yeah, that would be my pick, definitely.
Awesome. How are the builds coming along? Our Christmas tree and our snowman.
They're coming along, Sam. Coming along.
Making progress. Well, we'll take another progress. We'll take another question then. Another great question that we love answering is, what advice do you have for a fan who wants to be a Lego Master Model Builder one day?
Oh,
that's a good question.
The simple answer would be the same thing it takes to play Carnegie Hall. Practice, practice, practice. No, I would say really it's a focus on, art skills. As Chris said, we are a very technical group, so I don't want to say that we're not, but we're a lot more rooted in traditional art, sculpture being primary. So being capable to see things in 3 dimensions is really important. Pile on top of that, Chris and I use professional grade software on a daily basis, the same software that companies such as really big animation studios that make all the movies that I'm sure if I was to list off, you would all know and love. We use those on a daily basis too. So that's going to require a lot of focus and a lot of buckling down in school. You get those things in alignment. Then you layer on a love for Lego. I think Chris and I both in our generation in the Master Model Builder world grew up with Lego and have been fans since we were probably the same age as a lot of the people tuning into this. So an understanding and a knowledge of how Lego works is also a requirement. So if you can check all those boxes, Master Model Building might be in your future. I don't know if you have anything additional to that, Chris.
Yeah, I think great explanation. I think another really important thing for me would be that you have a diverse background. We have a very diverse team within the model shop. Like Pete said, he has more of a traditional animation background. I have a woodworking background, a furniture making background. And some other master model builders have more of an engineering side, more of a 3D design side as well. So it's a really diverse group, and that's what we look for, because in reality, when we're building these large scale sculptures and creating these large scale models, it's not like there's a lot of other people out there doing it. So we need to really push the boundaries of what we're doing, and it involves a lot of different skill sets. So to have all of them in one person is pretty rare, but to have them in a team is what we need. So we need to have a group of people that maybe have a different background, including one of our master model builders was a baker at one point. So it really doesn't, don't disqualify yourself from doing something like this in the future just because you may not have every last thing required to be a mass builder. It is a diverse group of us.
Yeah, then I would just add one more thing, and then I will share my snowman that I'm doing. Diversity is definitely key, and that is key because we are, unlike most artists, charged or asked to work on designing lots of things that may be very limited in terms of what we know about, so we might be asked, I am a character person. I don't know nearly as much about cars as Chris does. So I actually designed a life-size Mustang many years ago. And thankfully our team was so diverse that I was able to inject what my aesthetic would be. But I had people like Chris who knew a lot about cars that I could talk to and get information and feedback on what I was doing. And I think that's really helpful. So diversity is really key when it comes to just having a whole bunch of different kinds of information. So my snowman is a little bit cold. He's not wearing a hat, and I only have red, white, and green brick by me. So I did what I could. Like most snowmen, not all of the snowballs that make them up are the same size, but we got a 2D, which is like a Christmas ornament style or a tree ornament style. And I did one that's more 3-dimensional. So
I'm liking it, Pete. It's pretty awesome here. I'm working right now on a like a Christmas tree. I'm trying to work on the topper up here. I got some what would be some Ninjago swords hanging out up top there, but trying to make it into either some sort of angel or a star on the top there of the Christmas tree. So it's kind of it's I think we're there with this tree. Obviously, if I had more time, I would definitely build in maybe some garland wrapping around. And I'm just working out of the bricks that we have here at home. So it's probably very similar to what you have. Chase, show them what you did here. I think Chase has a really awesome model. Show them your wreath that you did. Just show them the wreath. So Chase made a Christmas wreath.
That's rad.
Yeah. He's even got on the top there, it looks to be like what would be a bow.
Oh, yeah.
It's
a lighter bow.
Awesome.
I think that you got to call out, Chris, that what Chase has achieved here is he's making a circle using square bricks, which is one of the hardest tasks that we have to undertake as master model builders. So awesome job, Chase.
Absolutely. That is pretty awesome.
I would watch your back, Chris. I'd watch your back.
I know. I gotta look out. So that is kind of another side point about myself. And that is I'm a second generation master model builder. So my father was one master model builder at one point. Recently retired, but so I am a second generation. So maybe Chase could be a future master model builder. Who knows? Or Ella even.
Yeah.
Sam, do we have any more questions?
Those are great. Absolutely. Yeah, we have so many questions. So thank you to everyone who's posting the Q&A. We won't be able to answer every single question. We have so many. So thank you. So next challenge for you guys before we get into another question. Chris, we're going to ask you to make a present. Any kind of present that you want, a gift box. Get creative with that one. And Pete, a lot of requests for maybe a Santa or specifically a Santa hat. We're getting a lot of requests for just the hat specifically. So let's work on those. And then of course, lots more questions. We had an excellent question, one that's kind of rare for us that I wanted to share. One of our participants asked, what project have you worked on that required the most problem solving? So can you give an example of a tricky project you worked on where you really had to use your creative problem solving hat?
Sure. One that jumps out to me right off the top of my head. Several years ago, I was involved in the build of a 20 times version of a Lego set of the Bag End, which is Bilbo Baggins' house from Lord of the Rings. And I was asked to recreate that in a very short timeline, which isn't uncommon for us, but this was a really tight timeline. So I had to not just problem solve to make it aesthetically pleasing, which means to make it look good. I also had to figure out how to design it and build it in a way where I split my time. We had a team of, I think there was about 20 of us, but we had 6 weeks to create a model that was roughly 20 feet long by 6 feet or 8 feet deep and 6 feet tall. And within that, we had lights, we had smoke in the fireplace. We had a door that was made out of Lego that had a steel armature inside, which is a structure that let us open the door so we could walk through it. And we had to create all of this for a piece of video content, which only allowed 6 weeks to design and build that model. And that was really challenging because I had to solve it from a technical standpoint. I did all the steel development. I led the people. There's 3 of us who worked on the design. I led that team, as well as I led the production group. And I did a lot of training of new builders, teaching them how to glue the model together, as well as worked with our partners external to Lego who own the visual look and feel of Lord of the Rings. So that one was really challenging and lots of super long days and, you know, lots of problem solving. And although there was only 3 dedicated designers, when we would run into a challenge that required more intellectual pursuit or more people to help answer those questions, all of the design team and all of the master model builders in the Enfield shop got together and work session or sparred and had conversations to solve those problems. So for me, that's the one I think of. That's probably one of the most challenging. There's actually, if parents can help and give permission, there's a really good documentary that's about 7.5 minutes long where we followed the whole process of that design through to build. So you can find that on the Lego YouTube channel. But that would be mine, Chris. I think I know what yours is, but I'll let you tell that tale.
No, that was a great project, actually. I remember that one. And that was a massive undertaking, for sure. For me, there was a pretty awesome project that really required a lot of thinking, a lot of planning went into it. And that was actually last year at the 50th anniversary of the Apollo moon landing. Myself and some of the other master model builders and model builders went down to Washington, D.C. and built on the National Mall a 20-foot tall SLS rocket, which is the rocket that hopefully will be taking you kids to the moon and beyond, hopefully to Mars someday. So we built that model 20 feet tall, was based on our actual Lego set of the SLS rocket. So it was, not only was it technically a large scale model, we needed to have a crane there to lift up sections, because we kind of built it just the way NASA would build it, where they would have sections or modular sections that would come apart in space as it blasted off. And so we built it very similar and had a crane lift up the sections and put it down into position on the actual base. And we had a lot of challenges with that. Not only did we have to put steel in that model because it was going to be on display for a full weekend after we built it, but we had issues with heat. It turned out to be the hottest week on record down in Washington, D.C., where we were building outside in about 105-degree temperature. So it was just massively hot. And it was a fun, awesome build, and a very challenging one at that.
Yeah, that turned out awesome. And I just, before we go to the next question, Sam, I just wanted to call out, that was a really good question. I think it's probably the first time I was ever asked that. So
yeah, absolutely.
Whoever posed that question, good question.
You're doing good, John. Good job.
So how are our models coming? Can we show a status? Everyone's wondering what it's looking like thus far, even if we're not done.
For you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Pete. You showing yours or am I showing mine?
Oh, you're gonna make me go first.
I can go.
All right, let's see what you got, Chris. Let's see what you
All right,
got.
so we have the start of a box here, which would be the Christmas box. I'm actually now trying to figure out how I'm going to do some sort of bow on here. So I'm looking for some sort of bow material. Oh, Chase has something here.
No,
I might be able to use.
make the bow.
Oh, Ella wants to make the bow. So Ella's going to help make the bow.
Awesome job. I would suggest, Chris, in my experience, I would go for plate.
Plate, yeah, I know. I would love plate, but it's all buried, just like with everyone here at home. You know where that plate is. It's at the bottom of the box, right? So I'm dealing with the same problem. If I start digging through to the bottom of my box, no one will be able to hear me talk. Or you, Pete.
All right, so let me add in one piece that I don't actually have, so I won't add it in. I'll just do this. And I'm making the hat, and I'm kind of trying to put a little bit of life into it, a little bit of pose. So the hat's kind of been put on the table. It's sitting there. And I don't know if everybody can see it, but here's my hat. Almost done, getting there. Probably about 15 more seconds. So I would get the next challenge ready if we have one out there, Sam.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have so many suggestions and questions. Thank you, everyone. To get I know you're still finishing up on the present and the Santa hat, but just to get your minds rolling on the next, we have a lot of requests for an animal. So lots of different animals like dogs or a fox, a polar bear. So maybe you can think of your favorite wintry animal as your next build. So get your mind thinking on that next.
Pete, don't you dare put up that reindeer.
No,
But that's
no reindeers. But maybe a penguin. I don't know, anything you'd like, because there's too many animal suggestions, so many great ones that I thought you guys could just decide after you finish your hat and your present. And then lots more great questions. So I know Chris shared a little bit about interlocking earlier, but a lot of questions about like, what's your favorite unusual tip that maybe only a Lego Master Model Builder would know or learn in their job that you could share with everyone? A little insider tip.
Insider tip. You got a good one?
I was gonna say, I think the thing that I lean on the most, which I guess would make it by by default, because I use it so often, is if you take, and I'm just cleaning up my table a little bit. That's also a good tip. If you're doing this professionally, or you're doing it in a way where you want to be really good about it, clean up your area. Otherwise, you're going to start losing pieces and stuff. I think I'm going to switch my camera back to the one I was building with before to explain this, because I think it'll be a little bit easier. So I'm actually going to grab something too really quickly. So one of the tips that we use, or one of the things that we use all the time, is especially heavily used when we're doing lettering, and that is the 5:2 ratio. So I'm going to slide these under. You guys can probably see that these right here are not built the way you would standardly build something. And the reason that they're built the way they are is, I'm just making a stack that we can see, is they use the 5:2 ratio, which is if you take 5 plates and you stack them up like you would build in any other model. So you end up with something like this. It actually is the same exact size as a 2x2 brick. So you see how it completely covers that surface. So if we take that and we put it inside here, we're able to add a lot of detail. And I think I could pop this out maybe so you guys can see what I'm saying. So this distance inside of here, that hole is actually 5 plates tall. So when I put this, which is built this way, so the studs are on top, but now we're turning them on their side. And when we stick them into this piece, now they look like the letter I and a bunch of zeros, or O's. That's probably the thing I use the most. We can use that when we're doing a human eye, which I could show you guys an example of right here. We're using the same technique that I just showed in a little bit more complicated fashion here on this face, which if anyone's ever played with the Lego Elves line, this is one of the characters from there. But this socket of the eye is using 5 plates turned on its side. So you can see there's a tile right here that's facing out. And that's how we're able to create spaces within our designs and within our builds to put details in. So that's probably my favorite insider tip. And again, it's more likely because it's really good at solving a lot of problems that just come down to detail. And as a designer, that's where we tend to focus our energies. What do you got, Chris? Chase, what do you got? Chris ran away.
I'm back. I was digging in the bin. There.
Uh-oh.
So I was listening. As far as I think an inside tip to be for building, I think you really nailed it there with the more or less the Lego math, right? So I think that was a great one. And I think an inside tip that you kind of talked about there, Pete, was sideways building, and you used it in your actual the reindeer model at the beginning there. But what sideways building allows for is it allows for more detail. It allows you to create things like eye sockets in an eye if you're creating a face, because then you can take and make that use either a 1x2 parabola or whatever you may want to use for the actual eye to create that rounded sphere, rather than just taking and building straight up and having that flat surface. You can use sideways building to get a rounded curved surface for the eye at that scale, because typically when you're building at human type scale, head size wise, it's difficult to get that rounded eye socket because or eye itself, because it is so small. So by utilizing the actual elements, the Lego bricks that are already curved, and using sideways building, it allows for a more lifelike appearance in your creations. So that is, sideways building is always going to up your building level for sure.
And this is just a fun fact I'm going to add in for free. The standard width in Lego dimensions of a human head is 18 to 20 studs wide. So if you took like a Lego ruler like we have in the shop, and you measured from the side of your temple to the side of your temple, on the average adult head, it's 18 to 20 studs. So we use that, again, that same, Chris called it Lego math, but in art, there's a whole bunch of really important dimensional features. So knowing that will allow you to pretty accurately recreate a head. You know, the head is typically 5 eyes wide. so on and so forth for those of you who like to do drawing. So that's a little tip. For free, you now know the standard width out of Lego for the human head of an adult.
Great tip, Pete. I'm sure that's going to come up a lot in everyone's lives when they're asked that on Jeopardy or whatever. How are we on the final product for the Santa hat and the present?
Santa's hat is done.
All done. Let's just show that again. Can we see that present, Chris?
Yeah. So Ella, come on over here. Yeah, show off your actual your bow that you put on top. Go ahead, show everyone your bow right there. So she finished it off. Whoop, not too close. Right there. There we go. Go ahead, show them the whole thing now. The present, the bow. It looks like I see it. I see the bow on top. It looks great. Go ahead, put it right down there. So yeah, there we go. We had the Santa hat and the present.
Great. So did we start, Pete, did you start making an animal creature? An animal.
I am. So this is where I'm going to offer just a general art tip. The key to successful art, as I learned in college, is reference, which is if you're building a specific thing and you can get a picture of it, it's only going to make that thing better. So don't be shy about getting reference. I could have used some on this one, if I'm being honest. But I'm almost done with a version of an animal. Wow, this is
great. A version of an animal. That sounds very confident. A version of an animal. Chris, do you have an animal working too? Any preview we can see, or is it still top secret?
I have something, but I'm not ready to share yet, though. Not quite ready to share yet. I'm working on it, though, Sam. It's a work in progress.
In progress. Love it. Okay, well, then we will answer a couple more questions.
Absolutely.
And for all of our participants, remember, just go into that Q&A. Any questions you have for Chris and Pete or any challenges, we still have a little bit of time left in the session, so we'll get to as many as we can. And we certainly hope that you're building along with Chris and Pete. So we'd love for you to share any builds that you might be making on social media. You can tag it with #Lego, #MakeItWithMichaels, and hashtag Michael's classes, so that everyone, all the Lego Master Model Builders, can check out your great work. So definitely be building along with us. So next great question for Chris and Pete. I think that to summarize the several questions that we're getting, can you give us just an insight into what it takes to build these really big models? I know you guys have some good details about the safety precautions we take, the strategies that we have to use to make a big model that doesn't fall over, that stays together, and that we can ship all around the world. So what is the inside look at making a big model?
Yeah, I'll start, Chris, and you can help fill in because I actually finished my animal, but I'll show when I'm done. So typically it starts with an idea. So we'll either be asked by somebody internally, somebody from our Lego group, or we will work with somebody externally. So using Thanos, because I brought it up earlier as an example, that was an idea that was brought to us. And then there's a lot of what we would commonly be referred to as sparring, which is conversations between our internal design team, the designer who's focused on that job, and the person who is requesting the model. So we'll kind of do drawings and sketches, just like any other sculptor would, to get a model concept underway and approved. Once we have that, then it goes into, again, a whole session where not just the design team, but project management, production, the people who will actually be gluing these models together for us. We haven't mentioned that yet, but we glue our models. If we can get more into detail later on. We'll all work to kind of get the pose to a place where we know that the steel armature, which goes into all of our models, will fit and be structurally sound and stable. We'll also make sure that the design team is working with the aesthetic in the forefront of their minds, meaning that we're developing a model that looks and feels the way it should. So with Thanos, he couldn't be sitting down eating some sort of food or doing something that's out of character for him. That's kind of monitored by the design team, production, make sure it's buildable. Once we get through that part, we go into software and we'll actually sculpt the thing if it's a 3D object, or we'll draw it if it's a mosaic or a 2D object. At that point, we'll really get into the nuts and bolts of what elements we're using. We use a piece of software called Lego Brick Builder, actually the third version of it. And that software will help us develop a set of building instructions, which are much simpler than the ones that you guys and gals get in your sets. These are building instructions that really just show you the outer shape of a model. And then based on the training and experience level you have in the shop, you can take that building instruction and glue the model together. And yeah, it's really a lot of conversations, a lot of drawing, sculpting, and then getting your hands in there and taking the brick and making it form into the shape you want. So that seems kind of like abstract and bird view, but what do you think, Chris? What did I miss? I'm sure I missed something.
I think you had a good answer there. Actually, I would say it was acceptable, Pete.
Did you steal the koala
No,
bear?
I don't know what you're talking about, Pete. I have no idea what you're talking about.
You dirty dog, you. You stole the koala bear. Yeah, Chris just whipped that up, everybody.
I just whipped this koala bear up here. But I gave him a candy cane, though. Come on.
You did.
I mean, I stepped it up a notch. This is an Australian version of a Christmas koala.
Of a robot koala bear with a thing. All right, so I took
off the robot parts.
Oh, okay. I did a polar bear, a walking polar bear using basic brick.
I thought
It's Randolph, the red-nosed polar bear. So that's what I did. I don't know if we got any other challenges. I'm up for another one if we got time.
I tell you, Pete, I am sorry, Sam, for interrupting, but I just was looking through while you were talking there, Pete. There are a ton of questions. We are never going to be able to answer all these questions in this time frame, but I am really excited with the amount of engagement we have here right now. So keep the questions coming, and if we don't answer it, you can always find other stuff that Pete and I are doing and other videos that we've been involved with that you may find the actual answers to your questions there. But I love it. You guys everyone's curious, and this is great stuff.
Yeah, and I love.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, thank you again, everyone, for all the great comments and questions and suggestions. So we're answering as much as we can in the Q&A, and then Chris and Pete trying to cover. That's why I'm rephrasing some of your questions to try to answer as many as we can and maybe one answer. But thank you again, everyone. Keep posting in that Q&A. So for next challenge, guys, we have about 13 minutes left in the session, Chris and Pete, just so you know. So I think we're going to try one last challenge. So we're going to make this one a little open-ended to try to cover as many suggestions as we've gotten. So want to challenge both of you to make an ornament, a holiday ornament. So we're going to leave that really open to your interpretation. So we've had lots of suggestions for snowflakes and animals and sleighs and wreaths. So we've had so many that I just want to ask you to make an ornament, and you interpret that however you want.
It could be any holiday theme, doesn't matter.
Absolutely. Any holiday, any design you want. We have so many suggestions. We couldn't possibly cover them all. So I'm just going to open it up and say, build something holiday, anything you want, as long as we didn't build it already. No reindeer, no koalas, something new.
So I can't go grab the George Washington model from the other.
No, we cannot use the George Washington model. So build away anything that you'd like. Free build time. We've got about now 12 minutes left. So everyone get your final questions into the Q&A, and we will try to cover as much as we can. So we have covered kind of the inside look at what it takes to build a model. And I know that we talked about your favorite builds, but a lot of the questions have also been like, what was your first build? And so I'm going to open that again, kind of wide for you guys. Do you want to talk about your first memory building with a Lego set, or your first experience as a Lego Master Model Builder? Whichever one is your favorite memory, let's share that.
Pete, shall I start first with this one? I think I have a pretty good one that's very relevant to actually the time frame we're in right now.
Yeah, go for it.
So my first real job at Lego was in high school. So if you're here earlier in the session, I brought up the fact that my father was one of the master model builders and since retired, but I was able to start working at Lego when I was in high school as an intern. And I would come in during summer, winter, spring vacation, and I would do all the stuff that the master builders didn't have time for. So I was a model builder. And my first real job was to build. At the time, there was a store in Rockefeller Center, not Rockefeller Center, it was in Times Square in New York City. and it was a very big, popular store. And we were building a 12-foot tall Christmas tree to be on display in their front window. So it was going to be a very prominent location. And I had to build all the branches. So the way the designer, master builder Eric Varsegi, designed it was individual branches that all had, it really was lifelike because it actually had what looked like little needles and everything like a Christmas tree would have on it. And we had to take, or I had to take and build repetitive sections. So I built one branch, and then I would mirror it and build another branch. And then it had a center of steel that we would then take that branch and it would sleeve down over that steel, and that would be one branch layer. So I had to build a whole bunch of those repeating sections to actually build out that 12-foot tall Christmas tree. So that was one of my very first memorable building experiences. No, not the one in Australia. So that's a different Christmas tree.
Okay, never mind.
That's a good one. I remember that tree. I think at that time we were doing opposite roles because at that point I was traveling all over the place and doing a bunch of events, which I believe later became your primary task.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have two that I'm going to try to do as quickly as Chris did one. My first Lego professional experience was the day I started at Lego. I came into the model shop and I was introduced to, as Chris mentioned, his father was a master model builder, and at the time he was running the first shift shop and I was working on second shift, but they introduced me to him and I was waiting for him as he was getting wrapped up and he was coming out to end his day, and the door swings open and in walks Dan Steiniger dressed as a clown, and and I'll never forget that. I think for a brief moment I was like, I knew there wasn't a job where I was going to make Lego models for a living, but that was my first professional Lego experience.
That was your first experience right there.
Walking through the door. That was number one.
Let's be honest, that's par for the course for what our team is like.
Yeah, it hasn't changed. It hasn't changed. But the first model I ever built was actually for the original Lego store in the United States. It was in Florida, in Orlando, Florida, actually, on the Disney property. And it was, I built a minifigure construction worker that was sitting on the roof. And I worked on, it was the Peter Io model, but it was, you guys and gals who see him probably see it as the snoring man on a bench. That was my first professional Lego build that I did. Actually, no, I'm wrong. My training model that was really cool was I got to make a human skull out of Lego, which was really fun, if you're into that kind of stuff, I guess. But that was those are my first two stories.
That's pretty. I didn't know that, Pete. I did not know that first story of Zipper the Clown visiting you.
I spared everybody. I was going to do my Zipper the Clown voice, but
not needed. Definitely don't need scary voices. Absolutely. Great answers, guys. Can we get a little preview of what you're building right now?
I need 30 more seconds.
Okay, well, I'll throw another question.
Getting there. I'm nearly done. So
That's
how about
okay.
we right at the end?
Okay, yeah, we have 7 more minutes in our session. So everyone, again, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been so great having you all. Make sure to build anything that you'd like. We'd love to challenge you to build something holiday and share it on social, and make sure to tag Lego and Michaels, hashtag Make It With Michaels, hashtag Michaels Classes, hashtag Lego. And you can definitely go on the Michaels website to sign up for more classes and see this session again, recorded if you'd like. But thank you for joining us. Make sure you get your final questions in the Q&A section, as we just have a couple minutes left. A good question for us to address, Chris and Pete, is could we give a quick, since we only have a few minutes, explanation of what's the difference for fans out there who want to work for Lego one day between a Lego master model builder, a Lego designer, and of course, participants and judges on Lego Masters, since a lot of our fans have been watching that. Can we just give a quick explanation of the difference?
All right. So you want me to go first with this, Peter? You want to take it?
How about I'll do PMD and then you can do the next thing. So the difference between a set designer is they work in the section of our company called PMD, which is they're responsible for creating all the awesome sets that you can find in retail. They don't necessarily do large sculptural models, although they are doing some smaller ones. There's examples in the world now of some characters from TV shows and what have you. But they are charged to really give the kids and the adults actually who are using Lego an understanding of how to do so through the experience of a lead build with building instructions. So they don't do what we do. They actually educate on how to use the brick. Whereas Model Shop Master Model Builders, we're kind of taking that information, that knowledge, and that palette of elements, and we're inspiring you to take it beyond the set. So we show you how to make large scale models of people, places, and things that you necessarily they're just a little bit different. It's not as technical in the terms of it has to be a car that does these specific things, but it's more about how do you express yourself artistically through brick. So I'm going to throw it to you now, Chris, to talk about contestants and judges on Lego Masters.
Yeah, so very good question. So obviously, if you've seen Lego Masters, you've seen the contestants and everyone that's involved with it, including the judges, Jamie and Amy. And those are Lego employees. Jamie and Amy are both set designers over in Denmark. So they do like what Pete just talked about, where they design actual sets. Now, when it comes to the contestants, they are Lego artists as well, just like Pete and I in many aspects, as well as set designers. And they are really do a lot of the same stuff, but they have one major advantage compared to Pete and I, and that is the fact that they don't have anyone telling them they only have 8 hours to build it. In general, I take that back. In the show they do, but at home they can spend as much time as they want building a creation, so they can really get in depth with it and really create some absolutely amazing models. And to be honest with you, every time I see them, I'm truly amazed by what people can make using Lego brick, and it's mind-blowing actually for me. So the major difference is, first of all, Pete and I get paid to do what we do, where the fans out there, the contestants, aren't paid to build these creations. It's a love, it's a joy. It is for Pete and I as well. But it is definitely a passion, just as if someone, had a passion of knitting or something like that. It's no different for them, or being maybe making trains, the big train displays and stuff like that. So as far as that's concerned, it's definitely a passion, I think, more so for them.
Thank you, Chris and Pete. So we are just about out of time. So we have just a minute to show our final builds, our mystery builds. What did you guys come up with?
Chris, I'll go first because you've gone first, I think, every other time. So I'll cut you a break on this one. Get prepared. Strap in. If you got a seatbelt on your couch, now's the time because I'm going to blow your socks off. Ready for this? I did. It's a Christmas ornament that's comprised of a lot of things I heard. There's candy cane. There's wreaths, forgot what that's called. There's even a little snow dusted on there. And yeah, it's pretty amazing. I think I'm retiring. So you guys put your applications in. There's going to be a master builder slot because this is my opus. Chris, what do you got? Top that.
All right, so I went totally different. We are not messing around here. Chase suggests we went with a dreidel.
I didn't suggest that.
Dude, that was your suggestion at one point to make a dreidel, and I remembered it. So we're going with a dreidel. A dreidel. Chase at one point wanted me to make a dreidel, and there it is, the dreidel. Go ahead, show them. Can it spin? Will it spin? Can you put it down there? Give it a try. We're gonna try it out before we go here. No, I don't know. Here, let me try. Oh, I got a pretty good spin on it.
There's at least one revolution on there. That counts. That counts.
Well, guys, yeah, we are at time. So it is time to say our goodbyes. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And we'll be sharing the instructions for the reindeer build from the beginning of the session after today's session. So look out for that in your email. And as we said, make sure to share your builds on social and visit michaels.com to watch this recording back or to sign up for more classes. Bye, everyone. Happy holidays.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for coming. This was awesome.
Have a nice day.